Hey folks, how's it going? Dr. Spin. Eclectic album reviews and general musical meanderings. Welcome to my top 10. Hopefully you found yourself here from the previous post that gave you 11 through 20. This is going to be 10 through 1, the album of the year. And the whole reason I do all this mess is because I really like to have an album that sums up my experiences of the year. When I go back and think about the year, I can say this is the album that was important for that year, and everything else falls into place after just looking for that particular quest. So these albums were very, very thoroughly vetted out of over 150 albums I listened to throughout the course of the year. Really great stuff. A lot of stuff we had to leave behind along the way. Great music. But this, I feel really confident about how this list turned out. So let's start out with, at number 10, the Black Pumas, Chronicles of a Diamond.
More than a love song. It's more than a fantasy. More than a little bit. This life is more than a dream, y'all.
The crossover R&B rock stylings of the Black Pumas from Austin, Texas, my hometown, was really irresistible over the course of this year. Sort of this kind of mix of Prince backed by the Black Keys. It's kind of the feeling of this one, and as we listen to it throughout the course of the year, again, this is another one that connected really strong with my family. I know my daughter, oldest daughter, really loved this album, and she really wanted me to take her to see the Black Pumas when they played locally, but she got sick that night, so I took her to Beat instead. Darn. At number 9, I got the Decemberists. As it ever was, so it will be again.
Calm down. Meet at the burial ground. They funded the Ilion, tore down the merry-go-round.
In the last post, I mentioned the importance of songwriting as a metric for me this year in choosing albums going forward, and this album has got the songwriting. Again, the songs aren't super complex. They're very elegant, in fact. But the gut-wrenching lyrics and really memorable hooks really hold this album together. It's got a very idiosyncratic style that you see the Decemberists always sing in this kind of bardic, drama club style pop, and even a little bit of leanings into progressive rock at the end. The last track, Joan in the Garden's a 12-minute neo-prog track. Maybe could have had a little bit of the fat trimmed off of it, but in the end, very effective at what it does. So another fantastic album from the Decemberists. Okay, next up at number 8, I got Slift's Ilion. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever seen the documentary Jodorowsky's Dune, but it's a film about the filmmaker Jodorowsky, who wanted to make a version of Dune in the 70s. He had all this high-dollar talent to put for his vision of the film. It's way too expensive, never ended up getting made, but ended up being a template for other versions of the film. My point in saying this is that his idea for the soundtrack was to mix Pink Floyd and Magma, and apparently both these bands agreed to do that for this Dune movie. And if Magma was going to be the soundtrack for the 70s version of Dune, I would put forth Slift as a possible option for the 21st century versions of Dune that are out there. It's epic and it's crushing. It's also ambient and beautiful, has these beautiful melodic sections, could be both the representation of the dark soul of the House Harkonnen, but also the practiced elegance of the Atreides. It's got this sense, basically, of a kind of post-apocalyptic space opera, and from beginning to end, even though it's very riff-based and not super song-based, it's so compelling and so energetic. It's got this great power trio format that I really find almost irresistible. Okay, next up on number 7, I've got Wesley Fuller's All Fuller, No Filler.
Dreams are back in style. Fill my heart with hope, if only for a little while.
Back to songwriting. This is the probably most pristine example of power pop songwriting on this year's list. Clearly nostalgic, clearly harkening back to the heyday of the 70s era of kind of bubblegum, post-Beatles pop, but really driven forward again by song after song after song of bangers all the way through, and amazing, amazing vocal arrangements that really tie the whole thing together in a super convincing way. At number 6, I got Jack White's No Name.
That's all I know. Feels like tonight was a long time ago. She's blinking the light.
Many critics have called this Jack White's kind of return to form album because it really does capture a lot of the off the chain energy of the early White Stripes albums, and I would agree with that. The songs of this album are also great. It really captures the incendiary kind of blues rock feel of Led Zeppelin in their prime. At number 5, I got Death Dynamic Shroud's Transcendence spot. part of a trilogy of albums released at the end of last year by Decemberists Shroud, and like the others in this release packet, it's unbelievably imaginative, but still really has its own kind of theme that holds it together. It traces this idea of like a consciousness emerging from technology and kind of a relevant topic for our current AI landscape. And it also has a sense of almost being like an AI feel to the album, but it's also very, very human, as it's probably its best track begs the listener to acknowledge. At number 4, we got Adventures of Jet, Muscle.
When I go out, I go on fire. I won't slow down, I won't get tired. And when the branch behind me burns,
I just can't do it. I can't keep Adventures of Jet off the list. Every time I put Adventures of Jet or their alter ego Bob Goblin on my list for the past 3 years, even though these are older albums, they rise to the top every single time. Amazing songwriting, unbelievable energy, details beyond compare, and the vital drive that can only be brought forth by human hands on instruments playing these things. And this is sort of the end of the catalog of their studio releases as far as my experience goes. But it looks like their long-awaited Cine Star video game themed album may be released next year, so even 2025 may see more from the Bob Goblin Adventures of Jet camp. We're up to the top 3 now, and any one of these top 3 albums, I think throughout the course of the year, I acknowledge could be album of the year. They're all great. All 3 of these albums are fantastic and deserve your attention, but only one ended up rising to the top. At number 3, I got Nickel Creek's Celebrants. This was kind of the stylistic outlier for me this year, but it's kind of progressive bluegrass approach to composition and songwriting is honed by tradition. You know, it's not a traditional bluegrass album, but the musicians involved in Nickel Creek have honed their skills and their craft to such a point that when they diverge from tradition, it still captures the feelings associated with that tradition, but speaks sort of a different language in the end. There's so many killer musical moments and so many amazing performances on this album. Unbelievable that anybody would pass it up if given the opportunity to check it out. So please do on the Nickel Creek Celebrants. Okay, next up at number 2, I got Geordie Greep's The New Sound.
do you come here often? Do you know how this thing works? Do you go to bed with a different man every night? Don't tell me I'm the first.
The debut solo album from Geordie Greep of Black Midi fame kind of does have some connections to his work with Black Midi, but the expression of those concepts are a little bit different. Whereas with Black Midi, it was a little bit more of a noise rock, math rock, experimental approach. Geordie Greep takes the underlying basic concepts that are expressed in those styles and puts it in this sort of Latin jazz, vaudevillian production that is the new sound. There's a concept also that blows through this album that kind of could make some people feel a little bit unsettled if you don't understand that Geordie Greep is playing characters. There's character studies, mostly in misogyny and insecurity. But he pulls it together in such a convincing way and musically expresses it in this really unique way. The only thing that I would say is the chink in the armor on this one, the really thing that kind of didn't quite get it up to number 1, is that there's parts of it where his improvisational feel of his songwriting, his melodicism, kind of takes over and you lose some of the melodic craft that would really boost this album up a little bit above even what it is. Even so, it's a compelling album straight through. And even though it didn't quite get to the number 1 slot this year, it is by far the highest scoring November album ever. It really had a shot at this number 1 slot. But the album that I chose for my album of the year this year has so much going on for it, so much subtlety. The first time I listened to it, I noticed there were things going on in there that I knew would unspool over the course of my listening to it. And that's Nowhere's Nowhere Forever. Like the new sound, Nowhere Forever has unbelievable musicianship, unbelievable chops, unbelievable songwriting, jazz-influenced improvisations, tightly composed songs, unbelievable melodies, which is the thing that really kind of put it up above a little bit of the Geordie Greep album. But also the absolute conviction that I have that this album is a very, very live album. If you don't believe me, then you should go and watch some of the videos that are associated with Nora Forever, because they show the band recording a lot of the tracks just live in their house, almost like Wolfpack does. Lewis Cole, the drummer, is playing in the bathroom where it's nice and the acoustics are real tight. The keyboard player plays upstairs with all the direct box people, and then runs downstairs to play the piano where it's more acoustically live. Singer is singing in the stairwell, so you watch the guy run downstairs. They got strings and brass in the living room. There's a choir out in the driveway, and I think it's beyond belief that all of these pieces could fit together so well in the minds of just a couple of people who are involved with Nora Forever. Genevieve Artadi's vocals are just soaring over everything, angelic and beautiful and crystal clear, with all these amazing melodic loops that jump up and down and really catch your ear. Lewis Cole's the drummer, who also on the side plays for Clowncore in the back of a van playing thrash metal music. He's a very diverse musician, but a great percussionist and drummer, and their compositions together really drive this thing for us. An amazing project that, again, as I've listened to it more and more and find more and more details on it, I find it unbelievably inspiring. And I think that some of this has some of the best bass playing I've heard all year long on this album. So Nora Forever is definitely an album worth checking out, and it is my 2024 album of the year. That's the end of my top 20, and I would suggest all these albums without hesitation. But you think I'm done? Not quite. I have one more list to go, and that's my Viewer's Choice Top 20. As I've been going through the year and comparing albums and running them through various eliminations, I've been running a parallel bracket for my viewership. And those people have also been doing these, and we've come up with very, very different results for their top 20. I'm very excited to share it with you guys, so be on the lookout for that. And also be on the lookout for our Viewer's Choice Roundtable Talk. We'll be doing a connection with that top 20 list. So if you want to know what's going to happen, please like and subscribe and share this video out with your friends, and follow me over on Spotify. There's just documentation on all the music. I'll tell you what it is, but you can go over there and you can figure it out for yourself. And I'm really happy to have shared all this music with you in 2024, and I'm really looking forward to what's going to be ahead of us in 2025. So until you see you next time, I'll catch you on the flip side.